All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy McPherson here. Very excited to have as my guest today, Dr. Albert Wong. Dr. Wong, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Guy. Really appreciate the invitation. Kind of honored to be on your show. Yeah,
appreciate that. So Dr. Wong is the Director of Somatic Psychology at JFK University and a leading clinician and educator in the field of somatics. A Marshall Scholar educated at Princeton and Oxford, Dr. Wong has been honored for his work in psychotherapy by the Northern California Community for Emotion-Focused Therapy, the American Psychological Association's Psychoanalytic Division, and the Yale Psychoanalytic Research Training Program. In the 1990s, he served as residential staff at the Esalen Institute for 5 years and has been featured on PBS, in Time Magazine, and the book The American Soul Rush. One of his film projects, Step One, Breathe, was named Best Drama at the Maryville Film Festival. Dr. Wong is the founder and CEO of the online educational website, Somatopia. Dr. Wong, welcome.
Thank you so much. You make me sound so good. I love it. Wow.
So let me ask you this. Before we get going here, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Yeah. So I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. So I'm a Southern boy. And grew up there kind of most of my kind of childhood, and then traveled afield, Northeast for college, abroad actually after that in England, and then kind of made my way kind of through a walkabout to the Esalen Institute and landed in Northern California, where is my home.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it here.
So let's get started here. How did all this happen for you? How did you get into this field?
Well, there's that old saying, a lot of research is me search. and so for me, a lot of it just was like kind of trying to figure out my own way out of my own kind of internal strivings and struggles. I think there's a way in which, as clinicians, as people, a lot of us come through this because we are trying to sort out our own internal workings and what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of stuff sometimes like holds promise, but it doesn't quite fit. And I was searching and seeking and trying to come to terms with my own like childhood and working through. And, I think part of the truth came from like trying to find a way out of suffering.
Mm-hmm. Right? Now, are we talking about, that's obviously the 15,000 foot view, but you talking about when you were a teen, when you were in high school?
Yeah. Well, I think, being the child of immigrant parents, right? There's a certain kind of displacement that happens. And I think there, you can talk about whether it's shock trauma or developmental trauma or, big T or little t, but I think there's just environments of relative, not as stable footing just because of the struggles that people from the generation before are going through, their own kind of under-resourced capacities and wishes to confer love, but sometimes it being kind of not completely landing in the most benign ways,
So you obviously go through high school. When you were in high school, was there this desire to go to college and be what?
Well, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I wanted to be like my dad. Right. I was named Albert after Einstein. I was supposed to be a physicist. Right. So I was supposed to be like him. And a lot of my life was really geared towards being or becoming him. But there was something about just science that didn't seem enough of a life. It didn't feel sufficiently connective or fulfilling. And it actually, honestly, really wasn't my life or my vision. It was kind of an inherited aspiration, from my father trying to impart what he knew to survive, right? And so that's kind of what I did. So that was the direction I took, but it didn't really fit. It was kind of, I was really what I would call alienated from myself, split off from my native intuitive understandings of who am I really. Like I was kind of a fragmented, false version of a self. And so even though I was successful, right, kind of moving forward in many domains and going to school at Princeton where my dad went, and achieving and receiving certain kind of awards like my dad did, it didn't fit. It didn't feel like my life. It felt like kind of the life of a fragmented false self, and that began to wear on me. And kind of it took a lot of time trying to find the answers in books and strive and read until I found this place called the Esalen Institute, and that's where I would say kind of my journey and my self healing and kind of the foundation of what I understand in terms of integrative trauma work comes today. Yeah.
So it's interesting, of course. I mean, it's the story in a sense of a lot of us, but I think more specifically, a lot of immigrant kids who come from first generation immigrants. But that desire that yearning, that sense that something is not quite right. Oftentimes, I mean, I think I'm still working through that to a certain degree. But it takes a long time. So you're talking, you were in college, you were quote unquote successful. Well, you were successful. And then, so how did you find the Esalen Institute?
Good question. It was interesting. Like I would get into these, I would guess you call them maybe kind of states of discontent, right? Kind of profound states of discontent. Things were not at peace in my life. The track that I was on was not where I was headed. And I would just go searching. I would go searching through bookstores. I would go searching typically through libraries, because that's what I knew. That was the familiar ground. And I would just scan the books for any inkling of a spark of an answer, right? And it was almost like trying to listen to a radio, and there was static most of the time, but sometimes some little message would come through. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. And then it would disappear again. And then I would search the books again, and then I'd hear a little, poke of a sound. Oh, I hear that. Okay. And then, but I would find these little kind of like messages like, okay, Gregory Bateson said something, and wow, that's really an interesting idea. Or Abraham Maslow, wow, yeah, self-actually. Oh, okay, okay, so and then I started to pick up on these little pieces, and a lot of them seemed to flow through the Esalen Institute. It was almost like, okay, there was this place that was actually sending out these radio signals from which a lot of these understandings emanated, and it existed. and I remember, just taking a walk one evening late at night, and it was just like, okay, I have a choice. And it was an interesting, I don't know why, it was just like I could either go to India, and I'm not sure why it was India, but there was maybe somebody who I knew who told me about this place called Oroville, and I could either go there or I could go to the Esalen Institute. There was some notion of a change or a transformation that needed to happen. And
how old were you at this point?
At that point, I would have been 22, 23. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, Esalen is this incredible place that I have not. Well, I was there. I didn't attend any workshops there, but it's in Northern California, in Big Sur.
Exactly.
Right. Have these incredible workshops and yeah. I mean, you could even say more about that. How would you describe Esalen?
Well, it's like a carnival of human potential consciousness, right? I mean, at different points in time. I mean, there's like everybody who, at least in the 60s, particularly in the 70s, like anybody who was anybody kind of like went through. And it's the grandmother of the human potential movement, basically. It's like the grandmother of all human potential centers. everything else like Omega, Kripalu, all the other places really were kind of modeled after it. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an amazing place.
So you go there, what
Yeah.
happens?
So this is like becomes my new alma mater. It becomes the University of the Soul, I would say. It became a place where I went filled with both hope and desperation and tried to mend my life. And, and I was really so honored and grateful to be able to find teachers, mentors, guides, and practices that really helped shepherd the fragmented aspects of me back into some semblance of a whole, right? And, yeah. Go ahead.
So can you say more about, like, you were over here in a sense with college and school, and what were you studying at Princeton?
I was studying physics.
Physics,
just like
okay.
a good young Einstein, yeah.
Can you articulate what that place was that you kind of felt intuitively you needed to go to, or the puzzle piece that was missing in a sense? What was that?
It's hard to describe. I mean, I know there was a sense of disquiet in my heart, like something isn't fitting and something is not right. And I think for many people, like that's kind of how trauma lands or hits. It's just like moods or periods of like, okay, why am I here even, right? So, but I think like the intuitive sense, and it was so strange, like there would be somebody that I'd meet and there'd be something like alive about them or something whole about them. And, I remember it was so strange. It was a woman named Sandy Fortier, but like, because I hopped around in grad school from place to place. I was at the University of Michigan kind of by this time. And there was somebody who I just had a conversation with, and there was a presence about her that seemed whole making, right? There was just some resonant presence and capacity. And I remember arriving at Esalen, kind of working at the gate, and then who drives down the hill but Sandy Fortier? It's like, oh, that's you. It was almost like this, I don't know, kind of kismet meant to be returning to home. Like there was a sense of destiny in some strange way about it. Like I guess my story is that there are certain people, wherever they might be, who embody kind of awareness, awakeness, wholeness, presence, being, right? People who have maybe journeyed through their own version of a path, and for whom, when we sit with, there's a resonance, right? There's something that happened in that space in between of recognition or settling or connection or being, right? And for whatever reason, she was that or one of those people for me. And okay, wow, it seemed to all fit together in this strange way.
Yeah, that's incredible experience. I mean, we're drawn to that, right? We're like, wow, there's something about this person, and exactly what you're describing here. We're lured to that. So, okay, when does this shift? How does this evolution come such that you say, I want to become a therapist, I want to study, I want to help people in this sense?
Sure. So one of the beautiful things about the Esalen Institute is that they have this practice called open seat, which is basically, well, it's hard to describe, but it's like, okay, somebody wants to do a piece of work. You show up at 4:00 in the big house, and there's John Soper, who's the facilitator, and he's helping people, sit with what is the very difficult challenge of being with the different fragmented aspects of itself. And so I got a very privileged chance to participate in, watch, witness, and see some of the most glorious acts of human courage and, moving into and through human suffering and out the other side, and so I think it was from that engaged and repeated diving in, where like it was just so beautiful just to watch the human spirit unfold. It's like, who needs movies? Although movies are wonderful, it's just like seeing kind of human beings like learn to discover themselves again is one of the most heartbreakingly beautiful things ever. And it was really a profound, well, I don't know if it's a profound moment, but it was like, I remember distinctly one moment, like when I was like watching somebody, doing a piece of work. It's like, I just had the thought, I want to die doing this work, in the sense that, like, when I die, if I'm doing this, I will be happy, because it is such an honor and such a beautiful thing. So that was kind of the sense that I had, right? I think it was at the Esalen Institute that I decided that I wanted to kind of participate in this kind of thing. I wanted to maybe teach one day, to be a mentor, the way people have been mentors to me, and help kind of guide people through this process. So, yeah.
Wow. So just to be clear, you were watching two people, one facilitator work with a student, in a sense, or?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was live process, right? And it was typically, one-on-one, like there'd be a facilitator. In the tradition, it was like kind of, a facilitator, or might call them a reflector, and an initiator. But that it was basically what in other contexts might be called counseling or therapy or facilitation or kind of process work. But that's what it was. And it was dramatic, profound, and incredible training, and incredible, like, I don't know, working through of the human spirit, right?
So what happens next for you?
So I think there's a lot of just time kind of working through and doing all of that, and being blessed to have some of the amazing kind of teachers of somatics and humanistic psychology come through, and getting to study like full time, basically, with them for 4 or 5 years. And
wow.
And then I was offered a position with somebody named Jeremy Tartry. He was a book publisher down in Los Angeles. He put out The Artist's Way, and there's some other kind of like books in the consciousness field. And so landed in LA, and the number of events happened. Unfortunately, he got ill. But so I ended up going back to through a circuitous route, a side tour through kind of the field of theater and the arts, into psychology. So I returned to grad school in clinical psychology, actually returning home to the University of Tennessee. Which is where I was from, to do my Ph.D. And that was a very important moment, or a very important set of years in terms of both, education and rounding out the Esalen education, which was very like raw, pure, experiential, like felt, which was like an amazing education. And then the University of Tennessee, which was, I expected everybody there to be basically kind of CBT lab rat people, right? That was my expectation about grad school, schmad school, right? Like, I know what things are. But actually, good therapy is good therapy, or good therapists are good therapists, good people are good people, good healers, kind of. And so they were really kind of, there was kind of a strong psychoanalytic kind of group there, which was amazing to learn and train with. And all the faculty there were really like exceptionally talented. And I also got at least more of the lay of the land, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Like, and I started to piece together and understand like the wide range of things that people had tried, in psychotherapy, the way so many of these things wove together. And even more importantly, there was the secondary storyline, and maybe the more important educational experience of learning to reconcile with my parents, and having them kind of the wayward son who had left the field of science and physics and, potentially medicine, right, in coming back into like reconnection. So, yeah.
The experience at Esalen just sounds, so incredible. Were you staying there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I was on staff, right?
Wow.
I was
Okay.
on staff at Esalen. So for 5 years, I was
Okay.
living on staff. I lived in the canyon. There's a canyon go up. So I lived basically solar power, and I had a full on beard. I looked very different from how I look now. So yeah, I was in it. Yeah, yeah.
So when does Somatopia come along? How did that come to
Yeah.
fruition?
Yeah, good question. Right. So after grad school, I always thought that I wanted to come back out to the Bay Area. The Bay Area is this kind of, I don't know, epicenter of all things integrative, somatic, holistic, kind of a lot of the people who are graduates of Esalen kind of land in the Bay Area. So I wanted to come out here and potentially teach at one of the holistic institutes in the Bay. There was CIIS and John F. Kennedy University are two prominent places. And so I ended up teaching at John F. Kennedy, directing that for a number of years. And then, a couple of things happened. I think, John F. Kennedy was a little bit it was getting incorporated into a larger affiliate system with a national university. They're still going, strong, but it felt like the tides had shifted a little bit. And, I really wanted to spread the knowledge of somatics and healing trauma to a wider audience. And so that's where Somatopia was birthed. Right? Yeah.
When you started on this journey, in a sense, when you, let's say, first got to Esalen, and you might want to shift that beginning point as my question goes on here, to when you started Somatopia, was there a shift in your direction, in your desire? What was your goal, in a sense, from one point to the next?
Yeah. Well, I think, I think there were a couple of things that happened when I was at Esalen. Like, Esalen was a beautiful, wonderful, amazing place. And when people left, they sometimes felt very adrift, and I had an experience, and it was really a tragic experience of a dear friend of mine, Andy Glazer, who was, with me in my Esalen cohort. And so we knew each other deeply well. And he ended up leaving Esalen, but feeling very isolated, and I ended up committing suicide. So there was really a horrible, tragic incident. And so part of the vision early on was to create some online version of that, like a place that people could go to do open seats, to learn these practices, to train with people, to become whole in themselves and then healers for the world. So I think, I think at Esalen, like I was introduced to the work and the beauty of the work and the sense that this is going to be part of my life. And then kind of in the aftermath of Esalen, kind of sensing, okay, well, there's a gap, right, in the holding environment for people outside of that. And how can we generate that, create that, support people even after, right? Yeah.
So is that how you would describe Somatopia?
It's interesting. So the first version of that was actually a website called ithou.org, right? It was that was like the explicit attempt. This was way back before there was like Facebook. It was like an attempt to create that. And it was a one-man show, and it was very hard. The technology at the time did not support that. Somatopia, I guess, is a later version of that. And it's a more, I guess I would call it, it's more along the lines of kind of an academic, or not academic, but it's less kind of residential facility-ish and more educational kind of springboard kind of. And so I'd say, yeah, that's the spirit of Somatopia. It is like Esalen. It is intending to provide that space with the emphasis on like helping healers become even better healers, helping people to become whole. And
that sounds pretty incredible to me. So it's not strictly a place where a therapist could go to learn about trauma.
Right. No. Yeah.
Okay. So who would come to Somatopia? What
Yeah.
was your ideal kind of audience in a sense?
Good question. Well, it's a really broad audience. I mean, and you know, like it was interesting. Like I was surprised. I just put up like a small little course, and then like, you know, before I knew it, like there was 8,000 people who had signed up. And it's like, wow, yeah. And they really range. They range from like therapists, social workers, you know, psychologists, psychiatrists, healthcare people, you know, people who are working on the front line with firefighters, police officers, substance abuse counselors, coaches, right, yoga therapists, you know, massage therapists, people who have loved ones who are suffering from trauma and want some insight or understanding, right? People who are interested in embodiment, right? Just generally, like anybody who wants to kind of learn about themselves, learn about how trauma works, you know, kind of get in touch with their felt experience and, you know, their full life that they're given. Yeah.
And you do this through online courses?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Online courses. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just remind everyone, I'm speaking with Dr. Albert Wong. He's the founder of Somatopia. Somatopia is at somatopia.com, somatopia.com. So inspiring. I mean, I haven't really heard, you know, obviously I talked to a lot of therapists on this program, but what you're describing is something different. It almost sounds like you were, you know, when you were talking about Esalen and you first were witnessing the
magic, right?
It sounds like you're trying to recreate that or offer that. Talk more about that. What?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, there's that old saying, like kind of when you teach Zen, it's like it's taught from the warm hand of one teacher to another, right? To the student, right? So there's something about like the interpersonal, relational kind of you and me, and then kind of that resonant field that arises, right? That we're trying to give the opportunity to possibilify, to make that, to create enough of a container and a space where those kinds of moments of deep holding, listening, and transformation can occur. And to do that, hopefully, or ideally, in a way that's maybe scalable, right? Where it's not just kind of because there's the beautiful one-on-one work that people do, but how do we create kind of a whole community kind of, you know, designed for that, or connectedness. And, you know, I think that, you know, so much of how we try and teach people nowadays is like information, right? Kind of like, but a lot of it is in the transformative relational deepening that happens when I'm with somebody and discovering from the inside out, you know.
So from a therapist perspective, thinking of the people who are listening to this, they would come to you to learn more about or experience what? Right. Yeah. So for example, I mean, so we've got, you know, a new trauma certificate program coming up, right? And it's really exciting. And so they would come to enroll basically in a curriculum and in experiential practice sessions, right? So it'd be basically very much modeled on an Esalen model or a JFK model, where it's like, okay, so there is educational material, but even more importantly, there's practice. There's the opportunity to practice and learn what is it like to be with somebody and to feel my body as they speak, right? And to let myself feel my softness or my resonance or my edge, you know, kind of, and when do I leave my anchor and when do I not, right? You know, how do I listen for kind of the symbolic imagery of what's going on? How do I let the scent of that kind of come through, you know? So
Yeah, kind of. So it's basically a workshop space for therapists, healers, coaches, whoever, to learn more about healing the body-mind connection and working through trauma.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Dr. Wong, you are friggin' incredible. I mean, my God, I'd love to have you back at some point.
Oh, thank you.
Jesus,
Yeah.
crazy, so amazing.
Yeah.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So our website, like you just mentioned, is somatopia.com.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's probably kind of the best way right now. Yeah.
Okay. And this certificate program is starting when?
Yeah, May 24th.
Okay.
So yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. I was on a phone call with somebody who's applied in Ethiopia today. It's like, wow, and it's just such an honor and just so touched. Like, anyways, there's people are so dedicated, committed, and just humbling to have so much trust placed in our program and to be able to reach people around the world. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
We'll have this we'll have this up at information for your program up at the traumatherapistpodcast.com, and we'll have links to Somatopia up there. People can register for enroll in the course and workshop there. Very exciting. Thank you so much for deciding to come on this podcast.
It's my honor. Yeah, happy and honored to be here. Yeah,
all right, take care.
All right, you too.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.